twice. So anyways, I moved down here for number one, to get away from that lifestyle, because it was much different than the insurance industry. And I feel very blessed to lead an incredible team down here. We exponentially grew, but then something happened, Rod, and it became, all right, I got to provide for my family, to a different passion. And in 2013, September, it happened to be on my wife's birthday on the 29th of 2013. Something interesting happened. I was out in Dickinson County, about 2 hours away from my house, and I get a call from my wife. And my wife and I have a beautiful relationship. When I'm working, though, she usually doesn't call. She knows I'm in my zone. And she called me and she was crying, and she does not cry. She doesn't. It just, I just not seen it very much. And maybe that's because I'm such a wonderful, no, I'm no, that's not it. She's just not a crier. So what happened was, she said, hey, I'm at the doctor's office. I just found out I'm pregnant. And I said, Lynn, that's incredible. Why in the world? Like, what are you crying for? What's going on? And she said, well, the doctors think that I have cancer as well. And Rod, indeed she did. And you know this story, but your viewers do not. When a woman is pregnant, that's emotional, finding out, and then having cancer, and she did. That's a lot to take in one day. Now, I could talk about this for a long time right now, but I will abridge the story where Lynn had one of the most treatable forms of cancer. Now, for the viewers out there, one of the voluntary benefits is cancer insurance. And it is one of the most needed, because what healthcare does not cover, including Medicare, by the way, for those that are over 60, cancer is one of the most expensive things that can ever happen to any family. And everybody's heard of it. And you never think it's going to happen to you. But when it does, especially in our circumstance, not only is it a shock, but it's very costly. She had one of the most treatable forms of cancer, and pregnant. Some doctors were saying, don't do anything until you have the baby, but it might harm the baby. You might not harm the baby. Maybe take chemo, don't take chemo. Our local doctors didn't know, so we had to travel out of state to get some more advice, some more wisdom. My wife ended up going on chemotherapy while she was pregnant, potentially harming the baby. And that was grueling. So for any lady listeners right now, imagine being pregnant, going through all that, which I don't understand, but man, do I respect and honor and worship everything that goes through that experience. Having to go through chemotherapy during that as well, very grueling. Dominic was born. She couldn't get a PET scan, Rod, because there's too much radiation during a PET scan for a baby. And Dominic was born February 14th of 2014. Beautiful baby, full head of hair. And here's Lynn with no hair because she's been on chemotherapy. And the way that a woman can protect the baby during that time frame is just amazing, with a full head of hair. And Dominic was born, time for a PET scan. Doctor came and said, after the PET scan 2 days later, unfortunately, the cancer's laughing at all of the chemotherapy. It's spreading, and the chemotherapy hasn't done anything. So I tell you this story because it's just the beginning of the story. She fought a 9-year cancer battle. And for respect to your podcast, I'm going to fast forward 9 years. 9 years she fought this. Chemotherapy, transplants. For the first year and a half of my son's life, Lynn and I don't know anything about this. Sounds horrible. It's my son. It's her son. It's our son. We weren't around. You knew me during this time. I was still traveling. I was either traveling because of insurance, because somebody had to still put bread on the table, or I was traveling around the country trying to save my wife's life. And the most important thing, I want to digress for a moment. if it was not for the insurance industry with monetary funds coming in from what I had done from years past, it would have been much more difficult. Let's go back to that Fred Hightower story. This incredible, incredible man right there. If it wasn't for him sharing that one dream, saying one day you could wake up and have your house paid for, your cars paid for, have a second house, give money to whomever you wanted to. If he didn't sell me that dream, I don't know if I would have even stuck with it, man. I don't. But because of that, I was able to take, and man, I just got another chill down my spine because I had so many great people. So many great people. And by the way, you being one of them, that helped through that time frame, going through that and still keeping business running during a very difficult time. Every doctor that we went to said, you're not going to make it. You can try this, you can try that. The odds are 10%, 15%, maybe a 12-month survival if you do this or that. Rod, we got to the point, Lynn and I, with her cancer battle, where we would call doctors up and they're like, why in the world are you calling us? You've already been the best doctors in the nation. In the nation. You've been to the best doctors. There's nothing more. What do you want to come see us for? There's nothing we can do. We were at Sloan Kettering, finally got an appointment up there. I'm sure that many of the viewers have heard about Sloan. We were excited, went up towards the New York area, had tickets to the Lion King that we purchased on the way up. Happened to be her birthday weekend again when we were going up to Sloan. And man, they finally, they knew of her history, but they were going to see her because they were going to be big help. We went there. I remember the doctor's name. I remember going through what he said to us in that room for about an hour. My wife had to go to the bathroom right after. Maybe she cried in that room and I didn't see it instead of going to the bathroom, because that doctor said, get your wife home and spend as much time as you can with your kids. She may not make it till Christmas. That was September 29th of 2014. We knew we were in a big, serious issue right there. And on the way home, the first couple hours were awful, very, very silent. And then she looked on, she said, you know what? She kind of snapped out of it. And she said, I'm going to look up trials online. I said, I'm with you. Let's do that. So we're driving down 81 in Virginia. She's looking up trials and she goes, this is the one I want to do. The problem with trials is that if you try to get on a trial during cancer and you've been through all of these treatments already, they do not accept you. We went back to our local oncologist in Roanoke, Virginia, opened up a compassionate care trial for one. Luckily, out of the thousands of trials, the one that she picked was responsive. We then did more due diligence on who created the trial, went up to Columbia University, back to New York, not Sloan, nothing against Sloan, but we'll never be back there. Went up to Columbia, and this foul-mouthed New Yorkian doctor, man, he was right out of like Seinfeld or something. F word, every other word out of his mouth, and said, how are you on this trial? Brought all of his nurses in because he had never seen this before. The only words I wanted to hear, and I'll end with this, is that he would help save her life. No other doctor said that. Other doctors said, yeah, she's got 10 or 15%. And I'm being a little bit Pollyannish here, but they said, not a great chance of survival. This is the first guy that said, I'm going to help save your wife's life. We're going to do it. We had to surrender to him, but we found him, and 9 years passed. She is now cancer-free. Dominic is doing amazing. Yeah. I'm coaching his baseball team, like I mentioned. She just got she's now a published author in Chicken Soup for the Soul, the most recent version. It's called Miracles and the Unexplainable. So my wife is in there, which was a huge stepping stone for her. And the reason I tell that kind of long story, because there's no short way to say it, and I left out a lot of details. is that no matter what part of the industry you're in, if you have a license, my mind thinks simply, if there's a problem and you have a solution to that problem, maybe you should pay attention to that. Maybe you should get a license and offer cancer insurance. Because I will tell you, we were in a pretty good position, but it would have definitely been much harder if we did not have cancer insurance, and this is not a plug for cancer insurance. This is a factual story that happened that involves products that if you have a license, you can help protect somebody during a very, very, very difficult time where the bills start adding up. Because major medical certainly does not cover things after you go to 2 or 3 doctors and you still want to save somebody's life. They stop paying. They don't even pay for PET scans, right? They didn't pay for so much. If I told your viewers what we had to pay, which is in the 6 figures with a comma in it, and it's not a 1, how do you afford that? I mean, you can't. To save a life, to save a mother, to save, a wife and a sister and a daughter, and this is my life. I'm getting a little emotional here, and I'm not going to let it turn into that, but this is real stuff, and you can be a solution to these problems. Our industry is very, very meaningful. I will say one thing, and I know that I told a longer story there, but it's my life, man. You asked about it. I'm going to tell you. If you get into this industry, or you're in the industry, or even if you've been in the industry for years, stop trying to get something. If you come from a position of giving instead of getting, that's when your success is going to be astronomical. Even if right now you can't pay your bills, which hopefully all of you can that are listening, but let's say you can't. Let's say it is paycheck to paycheck, month to month. Stop thinking about that. I know that's a simple thought, Rod, but it's so important. Stop thinking about that. How can you give? If you come from a position of giving, you will get. If you have to get, and that's what your mindset is, you will never, ever get what you want because you're coming from a position of lack in the mind. You have to come from a position of giving, not getting. I went off on a tangent, but I hope it's valuable.
I love it. I love it, man. One of the other, Lincolnisms is love, serve, care. I remember that from a lot of our meetings and gatherings, that we had. I do want to mention, because it really is an amazing story. Just the journey with your family and Lynn and Dominic, and I remember that time frame, very well, and some of the aftermath too. You did a film about it. You did produce a film about it. So I want to make sure that, we talk a little bit about just where, folks can see that film and kind of hear that whole story, because I watched the film, by the way, very inspiring. It was moving. It was touching, man.
Yep. So the doctor that helped us out, his name is Dr. Fentel, locally here in Little Roanoke, Virginia. And the reason I mention him is that he is in charge of what's called the Carolian Clinic Foundation. And I want to start with that because think about what Fred Hightower planted a seed in my mind, because it always starts with a seed. Thoughts do become things. Thoughts become things. I didn't invent that. You guys have heard that before, but people forget about thoughts become what he planted in my head was, what if you could give back? So my wife and I, with every proceed we get still today from every book that is sold, we get an opportunity, including the film proceeds, goes to the Carolian Clinic Foundation. We're involved with $100 million cancer oncology renovation of the largest employer of Roanoke right now, which has been very, very satisfying. It's so fulfilling.
Yeah.
We're not getting any money from this. We're giving it. And it is the most incredible feeling when you can give. Now, the reason I answer your question like that is because both film and book proceeds 100%, go to help building this $100 million project. The reason that that's near and dear to our heart is I had to miss a year and a half of my son's life traveling with Lynn, having her get a transplant up in New York Presbyterian. What if we could have stayed here?
Yeah.
What if we could have stayed local?
Yeah.
What if the trials, we didn't have to go around the entire country to figure out a trial, but we could be here at home. We could have really connected a lot during that very important first year or two of our son's life. So to answer your question, we have a website. My wife has a website. It's saving2lives.com, or as my oldest daughter would say, saving TW olives, because it spells the same thing, by the way, saving 2 lives, saving. Anyways, saving2lives.com. On there, you'll see a documentary that we produced with an amazing producer. We spent about 13, 14 months building that. We just now have a 2-minute trailer that we've not released yet, because really this is fresh off the farm. We just got done with this documentary. Rod, even you said you saw it. We've not even marketed it yet because we were still tweaking a couple of things out. So you saw kind of an early stage. We added a couple of things. We still may add one more item. So I appreciate that you watched it, and hopefully it can touch some lives. That's what life is about. If you ask any of my kids, Rod, and it has to do with insurance industry too, what our family mantra is, it's changing lives for the positive. If you can change one life for the positive, you're doing all right. Some people don't do that for one person. What you do with this podcast, you've already changed a gazillion lives, Rod, and the listeners right now need to know that this can be a part of it. It all started with getting a license, man. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. But saving2lives.com, the documentary's on there right now. It will be updated in about 2-3 weeks, because we're adding another piece to it. But share that story, pass it along, and anything that comes from it goes to saving other people's lives here locally in Virginia.
What an awesome story. I mean, it's a starting from I would say the term from tragedy to triumph, I think is really appropriate, kind of taking that situation and turning it into an opportunity to really, change some lives for the positive, impact some people for the positive.